They're in every game. They're large, strong, typically green, and typically dumb. They're the Super Mutants, an icon on the franchise, but one that is controversial. Let's talk about the Super Mutant problem. The constant presence of the Super Mutant is a bit of abuse for the fictional species. What I mean is, they're utilized in an inappropriate way, which continues to diminish what made them special to begin with. The Super Mutant problem could be summarized with 3 main bullet points. Super Mutants had a fall from grace. Their continued presence defies established lore, and Super Mutants no longer add anything. I will go over each of these in more detail before giving some caveats and some solutions. Let's begin. The Super Mutant is a species that was once integral to the overall world of the game. They were the main antagonistic force in the very first title. They were the next step in human evolution. They hoped to replace mankind and inherit the world as the only species capable of living in the wasteland. They made an imposing force, loaded down with powerful weapons and tough, thick skin. Today they're inconsequential. They're weak and want nothing. At least nothing important. They fight to kill and kill to fight. They're capable of speech and using weapons, but act more like rabid animals than people. Some often compare them to orcs, but in many fantasy verses, orcs have their own societal foundations, even if battle is still the forefront of their minds. What was once a militaristic force that was hell-bent on changing the landscape for their kind's future became a series of small pockets of aggressive, aimless raiders. Their defining characteristic is that they hate humans and find them delicious. They're not even difficult to fight. In fact, the player is likely to come across them in low levels and take them on with early game gear. To summarize, they went from an in-game plot-driven antagonist to a regular, everyday spawn that have no real driven purpose. Perhaps I'm being a bit unfair. There's no doubt that there's a difference between East Coast and West Coast mutants. On the West, the intelligent mutants lead the less intelligent ones, and most of them prefer peace while trying to integrate or at least hold no hostility to human society, mostly out of concerns of being wiped out. While on the East, that's not the case. They're unstable, both mentally and physically, and that gets into the next issue. Now, you probably assume my issue about the established lore conflict is the difference between the East and West Coast Super Mutants, but no, that's not the issue. While yes, the whole finding a new strain of FEV in each established game does chip away at my suspension of disbelief, that's a separate issue. The East Coast mutant aggression is a problem due to the fact that every super mutant is sterile. They're a doomed species, yet their continued presence does not seem to indicate such. The incredibly violent nature of the East Coast super mutant should suggest a frightfully short life expectancy. Their violent nature should mean that they are met with regular combat with well-equipped wastelanders or even stronger creatures like Deathclaw or potentially Yao Guai, and often wind up dead. While they're no means weak in lore, they're outnumbered pretty heavily. Quality over quantity, I know, but quantity is often a quality in itself. Not only are they obsessively violent, but those who live long enough to grow to enormous sizes, the behemoths, would likely mean they require more nutrition to fuel their enormous, lumbering physique. And with no ways to add to their numbers, zero access to FEV in the Commonwealth, and the capital wasteland running out of FEV by the time Fallout 3 rolls around, there should be very little of them. Yet they continue to exist by a ridiculous amount. You could perhaps argue a separation of lore and gameplay, but it gets harder when a lot of their high population count is tied to the lore in many quests. So they're big, numerous, and dumb. But perhaps the most egregious thing is that they add nothing of value. Take the Super Mutants in Fallout 4. What really is the point of their existence? Seriously, think about it. What do they add? In lore, they exist because the Institute decided to run FEV experiments, created them, and then released them to the surface. They don't really do anything except attack people. That last bit is their defining lore characterization, and their defining gameplay characterization. In gameplay, they're just the same as a generic raider, except they have way more health and are easier to hit because they're bigger targets. And the beefier raider niche is already kind of fulfilled by the gunners. If you strip Super Mutants out of Fallout 4, barely anything changes on a global scale. You lose strong as a companion, which is probably the most impactful change, to be fair. But as far as the world itself, just replace the mutant camps with raider camps. Same general thing. I'm admittedly fixed on the Super Mutants of Fallout 4, more than I perhaps should be. Fallout 3 Super Mutants acted as a bit more of an explanation for some of the DC Wasteland's problems, so they're kind of a prop piece. N76 is almost a hodgepodge of everything, so I give it a little bit more leniency, perhaps more than most fans would. But assuming the direction continues, this is going to keep on repeating. They exist because it's Fallout, not because it makes sense. They're shoved in as legacy content, but don't even represent their original direction. There's some weirdness with all this too. What I mean is, despite what I've been doing, it's kind of hard to blanket all the East Coast mutants as one. Yes, they all have the same general problems of high aggression, stupid numbers because they can't increase their numbers, and the whole behemoth aspect, but the Huntersville mutants seem to show a much higher awareness compared to the others. For instance, they know what West Tech is, and what its general purpose was. They have dialogue concerning West Tech. They view the whole lab as their birthright. More specifically, they hold a level of reverence for West Tech, but also view humans as a bit of a folly. They know they were created by them. What this shows is that they have an identity that extends beyond me strong, me smash. You could dig deeper and look at Fallout 4. Yep, the very same title I've been ragging on throughout this whole video does have something that I really like about the Commonwealth Super Mutants. Talking to Strong, he goes into detail about how they view each other as brothers. There's a sense of unity and cohesion among each other. It's not much, but these two examples perhaps give the East Coast Super Mutants a lot more personal depth than the Fallout 3 ones, despite the fact that the 3 ones have infinitely more reason to exist than the Super Mutants of 4 and 76. It's a bit weird since the flavor material isn't actually utilized for much of anything of substance in the main game. They don't promote their identity or believe in supremacy beyond yelling about how strong they are and how weak pathetic humans are while in battle. It's very frustrating. They have no goals, no ambition, they're just enemies. And that's the problem. They exist when they shouldn't. It doesn't even make sense because they can't replenish their numbers and add nothing to the world. Compare this with the West Coast mutants. Out on the West Coast, they have largely developed to be a people in Fallout 2 and New Vegas. They're their own race with their own goals, different factions, and societies. Different sectors of super mutants can want different things. So, what could be done with the East Coast super mutants so they're not hogging up unnecessary space? The easiest solution would honestly be just kill them off. And it's a perfectly viable one. If they're not gonna, do anything important, why keep them around? We have raiders. We don't need big muscular raiders. Plus an even new source of FEV really hits at my suspension of disbelief by a heck of a lot. But this isn't a happy solution for people who like having them around. They're considered iconic, even if the value of the super mutant has diluted a lot. So a different solution is to give them a purpose and mission. They don't have to be central to the main storyline, but if they continue to exist, they can have their own side storyline. The problem with this is having such means there's likely to be super mutants with intelligence. And while Bethesda has written some like that, maybe about 3 or 4 of them, they're typically considered outcasts among their people. But if there's more mutants with that inevitable new strain of FEV, this batch may be broadly more intelligent. Perhaps put them closer to the level of Mass Effect's Krogan and mannerisms. Aggressive, generally not that bright but still capable. Uninterested in much else than battle, but still able to speak and debate. Their goals could be a number of things. Easiest would be curing their sterility. Perhaps there's a super mutant who wants to unite their warring clans, this may be your super mutant companion. Or perhaps there's a super mutant scientist who wants to perfect the super mutant design. That last one may tread too closely to the master's goals. Or all of this may have too many Krogan parallels. But it's something to work with. If neither killing them off or giving them a purpose is viable, the last solution would legitimately just be to get the juices flowing. Let them breed and let them do super mutant stuff. Why does this matter? Again, they're supposed to be a dying race, but they're so plentiful and so many keep getting killed that it really doesn't feel like it. Sure, you could keep introducing new sources of FEV, but this is more of a natural solution. If baby mutants mature pretty quickly, you could have them do the whole overriding thing in no time. Personally, I like the second option the most. It could even potentially lead into the first one by sending them off with a bang. But not as many people are as frustrated by the Super Mutant thing as I am. I'm generally pretty lenient with a lot of Bethesda choices that are controversial, but this is one of those that I do claim to be a problem that should be addressed, or silently removed. Not everyone agrees with me, and I even expect more people disagree than not. But what do you think? Super Mutants are cool even if they're not much else than an enemy? Give them their own goals, or just cut them out from the series? Let me know what you think in the comments below. A very special thanks to my channel members, especially the Members Thrice Over members like That Crazy Game Developer and Denny McPhee. If you wish to support me and join us as well, I'd be more than happy. Otherwise, like, share, subscribe, all that typical YouTube stuff. Thank you. Have a good one.